I'd like to call the order of the Milan Area Schools Board of Education regular meeting for Tuesday, May 23rd, 2023. Would everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you to everyone who is attending this evening. Great to see a lot of faces out there this evening. All board members are present this evening, including our two student board members, so thank you for everyone attending. First off, we are going to start with an exciting recognition. So if we could have all the robotics teams come up, we'll have Paddock my far right, and then we'll have Simons, middle school, and high school. So if all the teams and the coaches could come up on stage, and then we'll recognize you individually, but we'll have all the teams and coaches come down to the stage.
This is so cool.
We can have Paddock go to the front. It's good. It works. All right. I'm going to start with this resolution, and we will recognize Paddock first. So whereas the 2022-2023 Milan High School, Milan Middle School, Simons Elementary School, and Paddock Elementary School robotics teams are being recognized for the following accomplishments. The Paddock team accomplishments. Paddock added a second FLL Explorer team, the paramedics. Both FLL Explorer teams, the EMTs and the paramedics, completed a comprehensive course on renewable energy and the energy journey. Team members maintained an engineering notebook and worked to create energy sources, energy storage units, methods of distribution, and a community that thrived. Both FLL Explorer teams attended the Cowtown FLL Explorer Festival on Saturday, May 13th, where they presented their posters documenting what they learned and were interviewed by judges about FIRST's core values and the renewable energy movement. FLL Explorer Team 18007, the EMTs, was awarded a trophy and medals for their representation and responses about FIRST core values. FLL Explorer Team 27455, the paramedics, was awarded a trophy and medals for their documentation and understanding of the renewable energy journey. So we'll have the coaches introduce who's here for our Paddock team.
Okay, so we have some representatives from our Paddock team. You never want to hand an English teacher a microphone? Okay, I'm gonna make it short. I can, maybe. Okay, so this is Bob and Layla and Addie and James. And these guys are kind of a mixture of the two teams that we have at Paddock. I'm also one of the high school coaches. So this is a super important team for us. These teams are really important for us because they're gonna build our team in the future. And so this year, they explored the idea of renewable energy, and not just how it's produced, but how it's stored and how it's distributed. So we are super proud of both of these teams who brought home trophies at the tournament that we went to, and they all have little medals also, because we know that they're gonna be moving up on into the Simons teams, and then hopefully in the future up into the high school team.
All right, next up is the Simon team. Simons added a second robotics team. Students worked extremely hard and put in countless hours building, researching, planning, and rehearsing for their innovation project presentations and robot competitions. Simons Elementary Team 45367 and Simons Red 456470 both received awards at their qualifying event in December 2022. Simons Elementary Team 45367 was awarded third place champions. Simons Elementary Team 56470 was awarded second place for their innovation project. For the first time in our school's history, both teams qualified for the state competition that was held in Troy, Michigan. At the state tournament, students did well and achieved success by continuing to improve their persistence, knowledge, and teamwork skills. Sarah Farmer, along with parent coaches John Acker, Mike Angst, John Birchwell, Amanda Butler, and Jeff Hagley, are incredibly proud of both teams and their successful season.
So we don't have everyone here this evening, but I'd like to recognize them all, even if they're not here. So just kind of wave when I say your name. So for our first team, we have Ethan Hagley, Naya Morel Weston, who's not here, Charlie Kleiber, Stephen Stanley, who could not be here this evening, Elliot Kroll, Garrett Bollinger, Sophia McGettigan, who's also not here, Landon Blackwell, and Isabella Aker, which I don't believe she's here either. And then our second team that we were very lucky to add because I had parents step up to coach. Otherwise, I would have never been able to handle 2 teams by myself. Brennan Butler, Bailey Birchwell, Becca Dawson, Garen Brown, Elizabeth Bear, which I don't believe she's here, Danny Bobbitz, and Elise Angstedt. Great job, guys.
All right, next up is our Milan Middle School team accomplishments. Milan Middle School has added a 3rd robotics team. With the same challenge to meet, Milan Middle School teams created 3 unique robotic solutions this year. A 3-wheeled 4-motor robot named the Pigeon, with a long arm holding a hand-like soft gripper that can grasp and hold items from their edges. A 4-wheeled 5-motor robot named Gigabyte, with an arm that can move 180 degrees, holding a metallic tongue-like gripper to grasp and capture objects from within. A 4-wheeled 3-motor robot named Misty, with a bent arm holding a small 90-degree gripper that can hold onto objects of various sizes. All 3 robots went to competitions. Although competition is over, another student is currently working on a yet-to-be-named 4-wheeled 3-motor robot with a hook to grasp and release objects. Milan Middle School robotics team number 13550 went to the state competition in 2021. A small group of students are continuing with robotics and are working on the following: block Java programming practice with their own robots. Typically we have builders and programmers. Now the builders get to program, and adding additional sensors to their robots. Let's hear it for the Milan Middle School team. All right, next up is our Milan High School team accomplishments. Code Red Robotics, the first responders FRC team 5567, completed its 8th year at Milan High School. Team members, along with mentors Chad Strimple and Kurt Glushin, spent the 2022 summer building a robot that can attend community and school events. Coding team members met with Chris Overbeek, the programming mentor, to continue lessons and applications of Java. Team members planned and ran 4 elementary-age STEM camps in the summer of 2022. The team raised over $4,000 for the local Relay for Life campaign. Code Red female team members attended the Grand Rapids Girls Tournament and advanced to the semifinal rounds. The team purchased 3 more computers, 2 for coding purposes, and 1 to support students who wanted to learn computer-aided design. Team members supported seniors Justin Yarger and Noah Douglas on their health-focused Eagle Scout projects. Team members served as mentors alongside the coaches for FLL Explore teams, the paramedics, and the EMTs. Code Red team members planned, hosted, and ran an FLL Challenge tournament for over 300 upper elementary children. Team members showcased their robot at Third Thursdays and the GMAACF Gala. Business teams raised over $15,000 this year to support all the first teams in our district. The team was recognized at the 2 tournaments they attended for the great strides we are making in encouraging and supporting health and safety in our community. Code Red Robotics played in the quarterfinal rounds in both the Lansing and West Michigan tournaments. The team moved into 4th alliance position at the Lansing tournament. Code Red Robotics was awarded the prestigious Judges Award at the West Michigan because of the members' efforts to spread STEM education and promote health and safety in the Milan community. Let's recognize the Milan High School Coder Robotics team.
So it's me again. I'm at this side now. My partner's down there, though. She's just going to watch the little ones. So the robotics program actually started here in the high school 8 years ago, and you can see that it has spread. It has spread a lot, which is great, right? Because STEM education is going to be important. So I'm going to first recognize the people I have here. We have a pretty big team. We're looking at over 26 students. This year, we have had as many as 55 pre-COVID. That was a fun year. But we are an organization, a group here in the high school who not only spreads STEM education down through the elementary schools and through the middle school and then supports their teams, but we're also out in the communities. You can see us a lot. We believe in investing back in the Milan community, and you will see my kids out there doing that. So I'm going to start at this end. I'm just giving first names, not because I don't know them, but just because it's creepy. Okay. This is Mackie. Mackie is my sole business team member right now. And so when I say that we got over $15,000, that'd be Mackie and me. A season of robotics at the high school can cost up to $30,000. So we raise money to be able to funnel it down to everybody. So just know that my sole business team member is working nonstop and is still working. I have Kaden behind her. Kaden is hiding, and Kaden has stepped up. She is going to be one of our safety captains, and already has won an award this year. One of the big pushes with our particular team is that we're pushing for health and safety in our community. And so we're recognized, seriously recognized, for that. We have judges all the time talking about all the stuff we do. So Caden is going to continue that. I have Eric, raise your hand, Eric, who is a freshman, senior. Oh, sorry, Eric, you're staying. And he's one of our lead builders, so losing him is going to be incredibly difficult. I have, ready? Because you are like going to be one of the lead coders next. And talk to Jason, who is a sophomore this year, but unfortunately, as much of our coding team will be graduating in the next year, Jason is on the hook. He's going to have to really step up. Okay, so this is Chris Overbeek. You've probably seen him in town. He does a lot of stuff. He also volunteers to help us with our coders, which is super important because I can't code. I can't build. I'm an English teacher. I write a lot of grants. That's what I do. And I sit in the room while the robot is built. So that's my thing. And then this is Chad Strimple, who's one of our lead build mentors. And he comes in and really teaches the kids not only how to think mechanically, but he's also well-versed in CAD and CAD programs. So he's there to help the kids learn how to do that as well. This is part of our team.
Thank you. Is there somebody from the middle?
A couple of them.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Ready? Aowen, raise your hand. I'm going to do it. I'm doing you first. So Aowen it's her second year on our team. Aowen was part of our mechanical group who was in our pit to rebuild the robot after it was destroyed, because that's what happens when you play around. And Aowen is one of the people I'm super proud of, because in Milan, we are one of the few teams who had a very strong female presence in our STEM program. Both of our drivers were females. One of our pit crew was a female. Our human player was a female. So that's very uncommon in what we see. Some teams, like Celine, have no females on the team at all. And then I have Elliot. Elliot, raise your hand. Elliot, you're going to be my CAD guy, right? Yeah. Okay. So Elliot's going to be stepping up to learn CAD. It's his first year here in robotics, so he's one we can invest in, which is great. He's one I'm going to keep. Very proud of these guys, not only for their accomplishments, but also for the fact that they dedicate their time after school. You can't forget about Emma. Jeez, there are too many of you, and I don't even have you all here. Emma, raise your hand. I'm going to really embarrass you. Emma's one of our female drivers this year, and you don't just get to do that. You don't just get to do that. So Emma is our lead programmer, which I'm going to lose her this year.
One more.
No, yeah, one more year, but that's how I look at things. I'm like, I need somebody else to step in. I'm losing Emma after this year. And she was also our #1 driver this year, which, like I said, is something that you don't see necessarily on a lot of robotics teams. So I'm super proud of them. But these guys not only spend hundreds of hours here during build season, they spend hundreds of hours here in the summer because we're here still practicing and learning. And then they spend their own time after school to help with some of the younger teams. And that's something that I think is really valuable and something that they need to be recognized for, because they don't have to do that. But they want to make sure that these kids are getting the STEM experience too. And that's impressive for young people, investing. Okay, I think I'm done.
If we could have the middle school students, if you guys could introduce yourself, that'd be great. Let's. Okay, we're set. All right, I just wanted to make sure we didn't miss anybody. All right, so now therefore be resolved that the Milan Area School Board of Education commends Jennifer Glushin, Mackenzie Chappell, Anna Arroyo, Sarah Farmer, and the 2022-2023 robotics students for their accomplishments, and that we sincerely thank them for their honor and pride that they have brought to themselves, their school, and the community. I will entertain a motion to commend the 2022-2023 Milan Area Schools robotic teams and their coaches for all their accomplishments this season.
Supported by Rosenleacher.
So moved and supported to commend the 2022-2023 Milan Area School robotic teams and their coaches for all their accomplishments this season. Ms. Heike.
Sislo?
Yes.
Farrow?
Yes.
Freight?
Yes.
Gutierrez?
Yes.
Heike, yes. Murray?
Yes.
Rosenleacher?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Let's hear one more round of applause for our robotics team. I gave Mrs. Farmer a copy of the resolution that each of you guys may have, and then please be sure to sign the sign-in sheet on your way out so that we can record your attendance. So just make sure to sign that sign-in sheet. And thank you for coming this evening, and good luck next year.
See you guys.
Good job.
Congrats, Caden.
Yes, they are.
All right, next up on the agenda is public comment. A reminder, this meeting is a meeting of the Board of Education in public for the purpose of conducting the school district's business and is not to be considered a public meeting. There are 2 times for public participation during the meeting as indicated in the agenda. When addressing the board, you'll be asked to state your name. The board determines the amount of time granted to individuals or groups to speak. Each person shall be allowed to speak for up to 3 minutes. Board members may question speakers but are not obligated to answer questions or make statements or commitments in response to issues raised by the public. In general, such items will be referred to the superintendent for advisement, investigation, study, and/or recommendation, or designated as future agenda items for board consideration. Are there any students who would like to address the board? Public comments. Other public members who'd like to address the board.
Andrea Bennick. Good evening. I was talking to my high schooler earlier this week and one of his friends, and they were talking about AI and Chat GPT, and I just want to know if it's on the administrator's radar and how to present a policy to prevent AI and Chat GPT from becoming a plagiarism issue or submitting work that is not actually done by students but is being created through these AI platforms. And I'm wondering if the administrators are going to be amending policy handbooks to address these upcoming concerns that are very real and very present, not only in this level, but college levels and that sort of a thing. And also teaching our students how to use some critical thinking skills so that they're not becoming reliant on these alternative platforms and are able to use their own cognitive skills to create their own individual work. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bennick. Other comments?
Good evening, Rachel Hobbs. Thank you for this opportunity to speak. I come to you as a concerned parent, as I have always done. As the enrollment continues to decline and has been publicly acknowledged by at least one board member, I would like to know, what are we doing? Are we doing exit interviews? Are we doing marketing? Are we doing nothing? I know a few board members from the past have made public comments that the community has spoken, and they're meeting by votes. Unfortunately, I want to remind you that in the past 3 years, many families have come here before you to speak, and some have left the districts or have plans to leave the district. It is unfortunate that their voices were not heard and considered, because your enrollment numbers continue to fall without them. It is an unfortunate situation because we are all suffering. Milan has had some great things to spotlight, as the robotics team presented to us tonight. Great job, robotics. But we just can't keep the momentum. And we need to figure out how to do that. I have my own opinions as to why the momentum is going backwards, but that's another day. Moving on, I've spoken with community members who no longer have children in the district. Many are puzzled with the lack of communications from the district and how they are kept in the dark. As I look here at the draft minutes, the official record of the district, which is the official record of the district. In Tom Barrow's comments in the last board meeting, on the video, it's recorded that he says that there will be staffing cuts. However, that information is not included in the draft minutes. I'd like to know why. That information should be included in the minutes. While it may be difficult to see, it should be a constant reminder to us that it's something that we need to improve upon, and it should not be swept under the rug. I'm curious if the board is prepared to be honest with the community as it asks for a tax increase from the community, about how community members raised the issue of how COVID dollars were being spent solely on new hire teachers, and how the money was only temporary, and that those teachers would eventually be cut. Yet the board has turned a blind eye to any concern that was raised. I'm curious to know if the board is looking at alternative options to the staffing cuts, possibly a reduction in the superintendent's salary package. That reduction alone could save one staff member. In the April 26th meeting—
Thank you for the comment. Thank you for the comment.
Jefferson Schools has had 3 administrators take administrative leave in the past month for questionable actions that they're taking. Their CFO was caught in a sexual predator sting trying to meet a 14-year-old boy for sex. This man is the current CFO for Jefferson Schools. Before that, he spent 9 years on the Jefferson School Board. And before that, he worked for Airport Schools. And before that, Grosse Ile. The point being, predators seek out opportunities to be around children and to be in positions of authority. That's one of the main elements of grooming, proximity. This is one of the main reasons parents have been expressing concern about reinforcing the importance of safe boundaries with adults. It is not transphobic, it is responsible. My comments are usually misunderstood or misrepresented by most of you. I'm used to it. But when I said at the last meeting that all kids should be protected, I actually meant that. All kids. That includes LGBT kids. Or when I said no kid deserves to feel unsafe at school, that meant no kids, including LGBT kids. You might be blinded by your own hatred for people who disagree with you, but the video of the meeting shows all of our comments without biased interpretations. Mine standing up for all kids, and yours trying to twist my words and mislead the community into believing that I'm against certain groups of children. But luckily, the truth is available for all of us to see for ourselves on the district YouTube channel, at least for now. I'm not the one excluding certain children. Most of you are. I mentioned there are kids in Milan who struggle with bullying, like Gary Ross did in Monroe, who committed suicide, and he was in 8th grade. Not one of you, though, mentioned him or any of the kids at Milan who have dealt with bullying in your board comments, except for one particular group. You didn't talk about the tragedy of him losing his life. You didn't talk about the devastation or grief felt by his family and friends. None of it. You did not talk about the kids in Milan struggling with bullying regardless of their sexual orientation or gender identity. You only talked about those who are part of the LGBT community, which proved my point yet again, that you care more about your political activism than you do about any of these kids. And yes, by any, I also mean LGBT kids.
Thank you for the comment. Are there others? All right, thank you for those comments this evening. Next up is routine matters for approval. I need a motion to approve the minutes of the regular meeting of April 26, 2023.
Moved by Farrow.
Support by Murray.
It's been moved and supported to approve the minutes of the regular meeting of April 26, 2023. Is there any discussion? It's been moved and supported to approve the minutes of the regular meeting of April 26, 2023. Ms. Heike.
Farrow,
Yes.
Freight,
Yes.
Gutierrez,
Yes.
Heike, yes. Murray,
Yes.
Rosenleacher,
Yes.
Sislo.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Next, I need a motion to approve the minutes of the regular meeting closed session of April 26, 2023.
Motion by Rosenleacher.
Support by Farrow.
It's been moved and supported to approve the minutes of the regular meeting closed session of April 26, 2023. Those can be found in the clear folder. You can pass them in. It's been moved and supported to approve the minutes of the regular meeting of closed session April 26, 2023. Ms. Heike.
Freight,
Yes.
Gutierrez,
Yes.
Heike, yes. Murray,
Yes.
Rosenleacher,
Yes.
Sislo,
Yes.
Farrow.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Next up, I need a motion to approve the minutes of the regular meeting of April 27, 2023.
Moved by Gutierrez.
Support by Murray.
It's been moved and supported to approve the minutes of the regular meeting of April 27, 2023. Any discussion? Hearing none, it's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes of the regular meeting of April 27, 2023. Ms. Heike.
Gutierrez,
Yes.
Heike, I'm going to abstain because I wasn't at these meetings.
Okay.
Murray,
Yes.
Rosenleacher,
Yes.
Sislo,
Yes.
Farrow,
Yes.
Freight.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Next up, I need a motion to approve the minutes of the regular meeting closed session of April 27, 2023, which are also in the clear envelopes.
Moved by Farrow.
Support by Gutierrez.
It's been moved and supported to approve the minutes of the regular meeting closed session of April 27, 2023. It's been moved and supported to approve the minutes of the regular meeting closed session of April 27, 2023. Ms. Heike.
Heike, abstain. Murray,
Yes.
Rosenleacher,
Yes.
Sislo,
Yes.
Farrow,
Yes.
Freight.
Yes.
Gutierrez.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Next up, I need a motion to approve the bills reimbursement of expenses.
Moved by Pharaoh.
Support by Heike.
It's been moved and supported to approve the bills and reimbursement of expenses. Any discussion?
Mr. Sislo.
Yes, Mr. Farrow.
Just wanted the board to know that I did have some questions on a few of the checks, and as usual, they were promptly answered.
Thank you, Mr. Farrow. Any other questions or concerns? It's been moved and supported to approve the bills and reimbursement of expenses. Ms. Heike?
Murray.
Yes.
Rosenleacher.
Yes.
Sislo.
Yes.
Farrow.
Yes.
Freight.
Yes.
Gutierrez.
Yes.
Heike, yes. Motion carries 7-0.
All right, next up, in the area of board organization, I need a motion to approve the WISD biennial election resolution as included in attachment B.
Moved by Rosenleacher.
Support.
Go ahead. Support by Gutierrez.
I have it moved by Rosenleacher, support by Gutierrez to approve the WISD biennial election resolution as included in attachment B. You remember at the last meeting, we voted to have Ms. Murray be our voting representative and Ms. Freight to be our backup delegate for that election. Currently, there is only one person nominated at this time. Make sure I get his name right. It's in the motion. R. Stephen Olson. And they believe that they will be making a motion to nominate somebody else at that meeting. So that's the way that resolution reads, is that we will be directing Ms. Murray and potentially Ms. Freight to vote for Mr. Olson and then anybody who's nominated at that meeting. So any questions or concerns regarding that? All right, it's been moved and supported to approve the WISD biennial election resolution as included in attachment A. Ms. Heike?
Rosenleacher.
Yes.
Sislo.
Yes.
Farrow.
Yes.
Freight.
Yes.
Gutierrez.
Yes.
Heike, yes. Murray.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Next up in the strategic plan area of finance and operations, I need a motion to approve the purchase and installation of a sound system at the track and field and football stadium as detailed in attachment C.
Moved by Murray.
Support by Rosenleacher.
It's been moved by Murray, supported by Rosenleacher to approve the purchase and installation of a sound system at the track and field football stadium as detailed in attachment C. Mr. Gearbaugh.
Yes, this is a purchase that we've needed for over a year. The system that's there now has been repaired multiple times. My understanding is we're now down to one working speaker. It's really just not functioning for the sports that are held there. We investigated spreading this cost out over multiple years, but with interest rates rising, it really started to add up in the interest that we would pay, and so I felt it was best, and I spoke with the finance chair, and he agreed that we bring it and ask for the full amount to be paid in 1 year to avoid the cost of interest. This is a system that will be installed at the scoreboard, and it basically projects over and floods the entire home, away, and field with the sound. So it's not something where we have speakers aimed at certain things. We did have a demo. The high school principal, myself, and the athletic director had a demo. They bring a system out that's on a trailer that would be identical to the system we have, and it was impressive, the sound that it could produce, and the fact that it just floods everything. There's no one there that wouldn't hear it, and it won't be aimed at a neighborhood. It will kind of be aimed from the north end towards the baseball diamond, so that may protect some of our neighbors from hearing some of the things over the speaker system.
Questions or concerns regarding the sound system?
Mr. Sislo, I fully understand the need for this sound system. If you've been to a football game or a track meet, you know the need for the sound system. I'm very concerned, however, that we're going to allocate these funds now and then we're going to just immediately discuss a budget that will involve staffing cuts. I would much rather table this discussion and then have a discussion with all of our booster teams, and anyone else in the community to see how much of this we could fundraise before we purchased, so that we can maybe be a little more cognizant of how much we can, how much community support we can garner for this cost before we commit to paying it. That was a very ineloquent way of describing the end, but I think you get the gist.
Mr. Sislo?
Yes, Mr. Farrow.
I agree with Ms. Heike. This is certainly not the best timing in terms of a big purchase. However, my preference as treasurer would be that this be included in FY23 rather than FY24. It's apparent to me that it's needed. It's unfortunate in terms of timing and the optics. But if we don't approve this, we will continue to have a non-operable sound system.
Mr. Farrow, we contemplated including it in this fiscal year. The problem is with the length of time it's going to take to receive the unit after we order it. It cannot be installed and up and running before June 30th, and therefore we can't pay for it out of this fiscal year.
Can we assign the funds for this year up to the purchase price amount, and then it would be included in this fiscal year as an assignment, and then understanding that we don't intend to spend all of it?
You could create an assigned fund balance for that amount? Would be something that you could do?
I support that. Excuse me, Mr. Sislo. If we could assign funds for that specific purchase in FY23, I would support the purchase.
Mr. Sislo?
Yes, Ms. Frank.
I would just like to back up Mrs. Heike's concerns about spending the money right now. I think either tabling the issue, and as a member of the swim, we did swim years ago. I mean, our community is very good at supporting and doing things, so I think waiting might be the best decision for us at this time.
Other
Mr.
thoughts?
Sislo?
Yes.
Do we have an idea, Mr. Girba, of at what point we need to make a decision on this to be functional for fall, have a new system up and running for fall?
Right now, I've been told that if we order it today, it will arrive in August. So, and
So
we
we're
have
there.
one or two more things we have to clarify before we actually place the order. So we're already pushing the ability to do that.
Did that answer your question?
It does,
Okay.
thank you.
Any other questions or concerns? I mean, there's no reason why the purchase couldn't be approved, and then conversations could be held with boosters in regards to how to supplement that cost. Is that correct?
Correct.
Because I think we can have those conversations, knowing what we have with this bid, the fact that this needs to be time sensitive, that we have it in place for as soon as possible. I would support the motion as it is.
Support the motion as it is, or with the money set aside as Mr. Gearbach described, and would we have to modify the motion?
I would say you'd need to modify the motion if you want to designate that money as an assigned fund balance.
Yeah, the current motion is to approve the purchase.
Right.
Right.
Exactly. What I would recommend is you could vote on the resolution as it stands. If it's voted down, then someone could make a second motion to do it in a different manner.
That would be the procedural way to handle it, unless Ms. Murray and Ms. Rosenleacher want to withdraw their motion. No?
Am I correct in that as the motion is, it does not specify the fiscal year in which those funds would be coming from?
The fiscal year has to be next year because we cannot, it's not going to be delivered and installed, and by accounting rules and auditing rules, we can't pay for something in a year where it's not been received and fully operational. I apologize that I didn't put in the notes that it was out of next fiscal year.
So to be clear, if I may, sorry, seems fair. This is, if we approve the motion as it is, we would be approving the purchase with a budget we haven't, for 24, which we haven't necessarily know all the statistics of right now, right?
Correct. It would be,
So we're still kind
it
of
would be in the budget for the 23-24 school year.
Right, so we're still kind of waiting and pondering on some of those things. And we have good educated guesses, no offense, Krista, but right now, we don't have any certainties, correct?
At this point, we never have certainties going into the New Year's budget.
Okay, so I'm understanding that correctly, right? Right,
Yep.
okay. And that's through nobody's fault, it's just we don't, because of the timing? Okay, thank you.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
Is this purchase included in the proposed first reading of next fiscal year's budget?
Yes, it is.
It is.
Yes.
But tonight's just a first reading of that
Correct.
budget. Right.
I'm just trying to make sure that
No.
forecasting forward, I understand what, yeah.
All right, any other questions or concerns? All right, we'll vote on the motion as it stands right now. Move to approve the purchase and installation of a sound system at the track and field football stadium as detailed in attachment C. Ms. Heika?
Sislo,
Yes.
Farrow,
No.
Freight,
No.
Gutierrez,
Yes.
Heika, no. Murray,
No.
Rosenleacher.
Yes.
Motion fails 4-3.
All right, I will entertain another motion in regards to the track and field football stadium sound system.
Mr. Sislo, I move to create an assigned fund balance for the purchase of the sound system for the football and track stadiums, with the understanding that we will spend up to that amount and that we will reach out to our community and our booster clubs for support for the purchase.
Support by Farrow.
All right, it's been moved and supported to establish an assigned fund balance for the purchase and installation of a sound system at track and field football stadium, and to reach out to the area boosters and community to support that project as detailed in attachment C. Discussion.
Mr. Sislo?
Yes, Ms. Free.
So for clarification, by doing this, Krista, help me, are we assigning money through our budget to cover this and then kind of hoping we can get boosters to help us?
My understanding is that we are going to have an assigned fund balance. So when we review the budget amendment, I'll explain that piece. We'll have an assigned fund balance with this year's budget. And then next year, when we do purchase the item, that assigned fund balance will be released because we will have used it. But we are also going to attempt between now and some point in the future to find additional funding through other sources. So that will lower the impact on the district's funds.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions or concerns? Right, it's been moved and supported to establish a assigned fund balance for the purchase and installation of a sound system at the track and field and football stadium for the next fiscal year, and to garner support from the boosters in support of that assigned fund balance. Ms. Heika?
Sislo,
Yes.
Farrow,
Yes.
Freight,
No.
Gutierrez,
Yes.
Heika, yes. Murray,
Yes.
Rosenleacher.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-1.
All right, next up, I need a motion to adopt the resolution to support the 2023-2024 WISD budget as included in attachment D1.
Moved by Farrow.
Support by Heike.
So again, this is the final reading. We had the first reading of this budget at the last meeting. As a reminder, Ms. Murray indicated her conflict of interest with this and will be abstaining from this vote. Are there any other questions or concerns in regards to this budget?
Mr. Sislo.
Yes, Mr. Farrow.
I just have a few highlights. I'm sure that you all have this, but I did want to highlight for the community in terms of the ISD budget. Their budget presentation is comparable to the amended FY23 budget. The ISD special education budget is zero-based. The ending fund balance is anticipated at $3 million. This fiscal year 22-23, the ISD special education budget is expected to utilize $1.5 million of fund balance. Both the ISD and the special education budgets anticipate a small bump in property taxes of about 4%. Special education budget does not project additional special education revenue from the state in FY23 and 24. The special education budget includes $750,000 for countywide professional development. Both budgets anticipate step increases. Both budgets anticipate step increases and 2% salary wage increases. And also the ISD anticipates healthcare increases of 4.4%, which I personally believe is low. But otherwise, I have nothing else to report on the ISD budget.
Thank you, Mr. Farrow. Any other questions or comments?
Mr. Sislo, I'll just say to our community, there have been times in the past when we have voted no on the WISD budget. And typically those were reasons because we felt that the WISD budget there was a disconnect between the WISD budget and the budgets of the participating districts. And I'll be voting yes tonight because I think that we have resolved over the last several years some of that disconnect, and this budget is much more in line with the same issues that the member districts are facing.
I would agree. Any other questions or concerns? All right, it's been moved and supported to adopt resolution in support of the 2023-2024 WISD budget as included in attachment D1. Ms. Heike.
Farrow?
Yes.
Freight?
Yes.
Gutierrez?
Yes.
Heike, yes. Murray?
Abstain.
Rosenleacher?
Yes.
Sislo?
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
All right, now next we'll have a series of first readings for our budget amendments for this fiscal year, and then the preliminary budgets for next fiscal year. So first up is the first reading of the 2022-2023 general fund budget amendment. Mr. Gearbaugh.
Yes, quickly, you have that budget and the description document to your right. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Hendricks, who will kind of walk you through the changes from our previous amendment to this amendment.
The last time we amended the budget in December, I presented it to you in December, we approved it in January. Since that time, we have had a number of grants that came through to us that were not included or not known about at that point. So a lot of the increases that you're seeing right now in the revenues are dealing with grants or state funding that was unknown the first time around. I am estimating an increase in our revenues of $2.7 million. Most of that you will see falls on the state line, and a large portion of that is for one-time funding that we received for the pay down of the retirement system. You will see when we get to the second page, it's a $1.4 million increase to the revenues, but it's also a $1.4 million increase to our expenditures. They give us the money on the 20th, and we send it back to them on the 25th. It's an in and out. There's nothing we can do about it. We are also anticipating increasing our expenditures by $2.4 million. You will see some very large numbers, which normally at this point I would be concerned about. However, 8 of those numbers are impacted by that $1.4 million that I mentioned earlier. The $971,000 for basic programs, the instructional support line, general administration line, school administration, business support, operations and maintenance, transportation, central support, all represent part of that 1.4 million. We were told to spread it across as many function codes as we could, excluding grants and special ed. So this is the way I chose to spread it, and as I said, it's an in, it's an out. It's inflating these lines right now, but we have no choice as a district. If you look at the second page, there's more detail as to what makes up each of those increases. So for the $2,784,000 that we're receiving in additional that are recording in additional revenue, we have $751,000, but that has offsetting expenditures, so it's a wash when it comes to our bottom line. We received this year additional Act 18 dollars, which are special ed funds, to be used only for special ed purposes. We have them earmarked at this point. We have not spent all of them. The $1.4 million in the MIPSR's UAAL contribution is a one-time only, so it's going to be this year. It's in our budget. Next year, unless Lansing changes their mind, it won't exist. Starting this year, we have to record any E-rate discounts we receive. That's going to be also seen on the expenditure side of the line. E-rate is a federal program that allows us to get a discount on technology purchases. This year, we enjoyed a $56,000 discount. There were some state aid adjustments. We received our prior year special ed adjustment, so our expenditures for last year came in higher than the year before, which is what our initial special ed payment was made based on, and some miscellaneous adjustments. Under the expenses, grants with offsetting revenues is $751,000, the same as above. The UAAL is the same as above. The E-rate is the same as the above. There were a number of operations and maintenance issues, high school furnace, restoration work in the high school, district-wide roofing. We've had to have some elevator maintenance on the high school elevators. We've had additional expenses for MVU, and then some miscellaneous expenses. When we look at the additional revenues and the additional expenditures, I am anticipating us having to use $915,000 of our fund balance, which is an improvement of $344,000 over the budget that you adopted in January. Are there any questions?
Again, this is the first reading of this budget amendment for the general fund. Obviously, there's going to be any questions this evening, but if there are questions that arise before the vote, we can definitely reach out to Ms. Hendricks and Mr. Gearbaugh in regards to those.
Mr. Sislo?
Yes, Mr. Farrow.
I just want to emphasize again to the community that while there's an improvement on the spend against fund balance, it is a very significant spend down of the fund balance. Is $915,379. Also, it's possible that there could be some tweaks to this budget prior to the next reading. Thank you.
One comment that I will add, with the resolution that you just passed, the budget that you actually vote on at the next meeting will have an additional assigned fund balance at the bottom, and so you will not be voting on exactly what you see right now, because your resolution just provided information that we need to make some alterations to this doc.
But I do think that it's important for the community to know that, you know, when we're talking about our budget and we're going to pass or do our first reading of the budget, and by law we have to pass the budget by June 30th. Here we are in May of this budget that ends in like 6 weeks, and we got $2.5 million from the state. 1.4 of it is for the retiree costs that you were discussing, but that still leaves another, you know, $1 million that we hadn't anticipated in our budget. So these budgets are always moving, and part of it is because we are so reliant upon the monies from the state, and that is an ever-changing landscape. So it makes it very difficult to set the budget, and I want to give Krista her due because she works very hard to keep all of this in line. So I do want to thank you for all your hard work.
Thank you.
Yeah, I want to thank Krista as well. I know I drive you crazy with my phone calls and our meetings.
She keeps
but,
Tom in line too.
I do want to acknowledge your hard work and efforts. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next up is the 2022-23 debt funds budget amendment as an attachment F.
The debt funds amendment is only to adjust the revenues to where they actually came in for this school year. When you look at the attachments, you will note that there's a cover sheet, which is a summary of the 3 debt funds that we have. And then there's a page for the 16 debt, the 18 debt, and the 19 debt. And that gives the description as to how much money we needed to pay off those debts and what our debt payments were. I would like to point out that the $9 million that we paid on the 2016 debt represents the last payment on that debt fund. So we are now in the process of coming to you and letting you know what we need to do to turn things around and start paying back to the state as opposed to having to borrow from the state to make our debt payments.
Yeah, it's outstanding.
That is a milestone.
Any questions or concerns regarding the debt funds budget amendment? Next up is the first reading of the 2022-2023 food service budget amendment. Ms. Hendricks?
The food service amendment is very similar to the debt. I'm just making slight adjustments to bring our revenues and our expenditures into line with the actual monies going in and going out for the food service fund.
Any questions or concerns regarding the food service budget amendment? All right, next up is the
Just
first.
one,
Yeah,
I'm going to add one comment. Just so you understand, we have a fairly large fund balance now in the food service budget. There is the possibility that the state of Michigan is going to inform us that that's larger than they would like it to be. What that means is we will put some expenditures into improving some of our kitchens. That's basically, they ask you to create a spend down plan. And we definitely have some things that we can upgrade. We did some of that this year. We actually got a grant to replace one double oven, and we've purchased another one to spend the fund balance down some. Remember, one of the reasons the fund balance grew is when we were doing free meals for all, our membership in accepting food went up incredibly, and obviously the more meals you sell, the more money you make, even when it's funded by the federal government. So, and you're limited as to what profit you can make. Your prices are determined by the federal government, and so it's not something that we can do. It just works that way, and so it will help us in the future. Ms. Hendricks and I expect to probably get a letter from the state that says, hey, that's a little bit higher than we'd like it to be, and all that means is next year we will put some improvements into our kitchens.
All right, next up is the 2022-2023 student school activities budget amendment as attachment H. Ms. Hendricks?
Just as a reminder, the student and school activity fund represents our internal funds held by each of the buildings. A couple years ago, changes to accounting rules meant that we had to now bring them in under the district's umbrella. So they are now part of our budget, and they have to be reported as such. Fortunately or unfortunately, that happened in the middle of COVID, and our activity in those accounts was not what it had been in the past or what it's becoming or what it's going back to. So I am gradually making adjustments based on the revenues and expenditures in all of those accounts. These funds are truly held for district clubs, sports, classes. They're not dollars that we use in central office. I don't touch them. I am over them, but all of the invoices, all of the billings, all of the payments are done by building secretaries. So that's just an adjustment to bring the revenues and expenditures more into line with actuals.
And to clarify, any expenditure out of any of those accounts requires the person who's in charge of that program to sign off and the principal to sign off. So if the student council needs to spend some money, the student council advisor signs off on the expenditure and then the principal does. So they are managed. It's important what Ms. Hendricks said, that fund balance of 678 or 703,000 is really not fund balance that the district can use, and it's spread over hundreds of accounts. Student council has some money sitting there to help pay for things next year. There's a prom account. Every sport has an account. And it's at all 4 buildings. All 4 buildings have numerous accounts. So.
All right, on to 23-24. We have the general fund preliminary budget as an attachment I. Ms. Hendricks.
Okay. As you look at this, you will see a lot of changes going in the opposite direction as from the First Amendment that we talked about. I am anticipating a loss of $4 million in revenue. A lot of that is grant funding. The $1.4 million of UAAL money that we had talked about earlier makes up part of this. We will be using all of our ESSER 3 money this year, so there won't be any in next year's budget, so that's part of the reduction. There are a number of grants, either because we were using carryover and that carryover piece is gone, or because it was a one-year only grant that we are losing to bring us to that $4 million decrease in revenue. You will also note, please, that we are anticipating a decrease in expenditures of $2,158,000. So I'm at this point projecting that we're going to receive $1.8 million less in revenue than we're receiving than we're paying out in expenditures. Some of the big swings, if you look at the 110 line, the majority of that is for ESSER 3 funding. That's it. All of that, almost all of that grant was put on that line. That was to pay teacher salaries. So with that going away, that $1 million has to come out. There's another large number on the operations and maintenance line. Part of that is the one-time UAAL. There were some one-time expenses like the furnace and the roofing that I had mentioned in the last amendment that I'm taking out of their expenditure budget because they were one-time. And the elimination of the school safety grant, I had it all written into the 22-23 budget. Anything that's not spent in 22-23 will go into the 23-24. But at this point, none of that is reflected in here. But that would also be an in and out for your expenditures and revenues. Based on my proposed budget, I believe that our ending fund balance with no changes would come in at 3.8%. If you want to look at the second page, there's detail as to what makes up the losses. You will see $2.5 million going out in grants alone, 1.4 in the elimination of the MIPSR's UAL funding. We did estimate an increase of $450 per pupil, which is kind of the middle of the road between the three proposals that are out there right now. We also are anticipating a reduction of 25 students from this last February's count. For expenditures, I'm removing the grants that I removed the revenue from. I'm anticipating a 10% increase to our healthcare cost. I normally start with 10% at this time of the year, and hopefully by January we can come back to you and say it's only a 3% or 4% increase. But last year the district did incur a 10% increase. I have a line on here for increases to wages, retirement, and FICA due to contractual obligations. That also reflects any removal of positions, which I did remove, 4 full-time and 2 part-time teaching positions. It reflects any changes. If we had a retirement, I estimated what I thought the new hire would cost the district. So between past history and talking to Mr. Gearbaugh, we came up with numbers for all of those replacements. We are projecting an increase of 25% to our property and liability insurance, and that was a recommendation of our insurance company. This past year, we had to contract for deaf and hearing impaired services for a student who was aging out of the program, so that expenditure is being removed. I'm removing the one-time buildings and grounds expenditures, and there's some other miscellaneous expenses. But this budget is having us use $1.8 million worth of fund balance. So if you have any questions, please ask.
2 comments I'll add. The enrollment decrease of 25 students. Right now, we anticipate the kindergarten class coming in at 50 students less than the graduating class. So a lot of that reduction in students is due to birth rates in Monroe and Washtenaw County during COVID, which is now affecting us obviously, well, actually a little bit pre-COVID because it's birth rates from 5 years ago. Last year we had a very similar graduating class. We're anticipating the same size kindergarten class this year. Last year we only lost 5 students from the spring count to the fall count, but I truly believe that some of that recovery was from folk coming back because COVID had quote unquote ended. And so I don't necessarily anticipate that we'll see as many returning next year as this year, and so I felt I had to build in some decrease in student population because of that kindergarten versus graduating class size. The second thing is to clarify the insurance increase. SETSEG, our insurance provider, annually goes to one of the regions in the state of Michigan and reappraises all of their property to look at what it would cost to rebuild something if we had a catastrophic incident here. Southeast Michigan was the one that was tapped this year, and I will tell you every district is seeing between a 20 and 30% increase in their property insurance because the cost to rebuild is now north of $300 per square foot. And so our buildings are not insured for what it would cost to rebuild them, and obviously an insurance company has to make sure that they are collecting enough to cover any catastrophic events. So that is not Milan's own issue. That is a statewide, well, a region-wide, and they do one region a year. So last year a different region got tapped on this. This year it's our region. I can tell you that our workman's comp insurance, we have one of the best mod factors in the state, which means that we only pay about half of the premium that they would anticipate us needing to pay because our mod factor is about a 0.57. And so they do a lot of calculations at SETSEG to make sure that the insurance is appropriate, including because it is a pool, if there are excess funds at the end of the year, they actually rebate the premiums back. So SETSEG is not a for-profit insurance company. And And so because it's a pool, they can actually rebate the membership districts back if there are excess funds at the end of the year, instead of a for-profit insurance company, which would keep that as profit for themselves.
Mr. Sislo?
Yes, Mr. Farrow.
Just a comment. I just want to reiterate what Michelle had said earlier. I think it was Michelle, that the state requires us to approve a budget for 23-24 prior to definitively knowing our revenue expectations from the state and other sources. So I want to believe that this is worst case scenario. I do think that we will know more in the fall. While we're assuming a 25 less students, the possibility exists that we will fare better than losing 25 students. At this time last year, the total fund balance that we had adopted was 6.17. That included the assigned funds. 3.17 unassigned was what we approved at this point last year. So as Chris had indicated, what we're approving tonight would be 3.80 total ending fund balance, including the assigned funds, and 1.48 unassigned ending fund balance. So, yeah, that's a scary number. And we've been saying for an extended period of time that the ESSER dollars would be coming to an end. The use of ESSER dollars would be coming to an end. So this budget right sizes our staff in terms of class sizes. The COVID dollars were predominantly used to have class sizes that were smaller because of lost learning. So I just wanted to share with you, yeah, I mean, generally we want to approve budgets that have a fund balance of 10% or more. And let's hope that we fare better than what we're anticipating right now. I do think that we will, and we'll know more in the fall.
Yeah, the 3% number is it's a scary number for sure. So I appreciate that it's conservative. And again, we're not approving this evening. This is just a first reading for us to look at and then continue to ask questions of Ms. Hendricks and Mr. Gearbaugh as we move forward. Are there other questions or comments?
My only comment is that, given everything we've said about how the budgeting process works here, I would like us to consider as we move forward and the budget numbers do become more concrete over the summer, because so everyone knows we've budgeted for $450 per pupil increase. That's the middle of the road. The governor has asked for $550 per student. So as those numbers become more solidified, I would like us to consider, while it will probably strain the budget, keeping an additional teacher in the 2nd and 5th grades, because those are the class sizes that are most largely impacted by this budget. So I just want to put that out to my other fellow board members to consider as we move forward.
Other questions or concerns at this time? All right, next up is the first reading of the 23-24 debt funds preliminary budget as an attachment J. Ms. Hendricks.
As I mentioned earlier, we paid off the 2016 debt fund in the 23 school year. So the attachments to the 3 pages behind the front page of attachment J represent the 2018 debt, the 2019 debt, and then there's a page that represents the fact that we have to start paying back the state of Michigan for the funds that we borrowed in order to make our debt payments over the years. I am anticipating revenues coming in. The majority of it is tax money at $6.6 million. We do get some money from the state, but the $7 million figure that you see as an expenditure should be accurate. That is the amount that we have to pay for each of our debt funds, plus the amount that we do have to pay back to the state of Michigan this year. So.
Just a couple of quick comments for those board members who have been around for a while. This is a time to celebrate. As you know, we kind of had what I have referred to as a second mortgage. So the first mortgage is the bonds that we sold, and they have different maturity dates. As you heard, one of them had their final maturity date, and we paid off a very large sum of the 2016 debt. Because of that, our tax collections will now then more than cover what's kind of our first mortgage, so our bond payments, and we will start to pay off part of our second mortgage, if you kind of use those terms. That's the way that I think about it. So this is absolutely a time to celebrate. You know, we've started to turn the corner, and we're no longer borrowing from the state to pay off our bond debt. We are actually paying back the state to pay off that bond debt. So I'm very excited to do that. We are right now seeking some guidance. There is some fund balance left in the 2016 debt fund, and we're seeking guidance from the state and our auditors. Right now, we have it going into the repayment of the school bond loan fund, but we're not exactly sure, so that could shift as to where we need to put that fund balance, whether we put it towards some of the other bond debt or whether we put it into the school bond loan fund repayment. It will transfer to one of them because we will close out the 2016 debt fund and as we move forward.
All right. Any questions or comments regarding that? Next up is the first reading of the 23-24 food service preliminary budget as an attachment K. Ms. Hendricks.
The preliminary budget is based on the assumption that we are going to continue to feed students the way we have this year. I know there's been a lot of talk about free meals for all. That at this point is just talk. It has to be approved by Lansing before I'm moving forward with amending our budget to reflect that. Because I'm not exactly sure how that will end up looking on our budget. I am projecting an increase in wages for the cafeteria staff, just as we have wage increases across the rest of the district. There will be an increase in cost for the food service company. I'm removing some revenues that we received as grants that we won't have in the future. This year we've received a number of grants to help offset the cost of food products, but those will all go away as soon as we've spent all that money down. So I'm spending down the fund balance that we have, but it's still there. And when Mr. Gearbois spoke earlier, we are allowed to take enough in our fund balance to cover 3.5 months of expenditures. So when the state tells us that we have an excess fund balance, they're basing it on that number. So if there are any questions?
All right.
I will add one thing. Because of that fund balance, we don't anticipate increasing food lunch prices unless the state of Michigan formula requires us to do so. So we have no intent of increasing them when we're sitting on this kind of fund balance. But again, there are calculations we are required to do by the state, and sometimes those do lead to us having to increase our prices. We'll be running those formulas soon, and we'll get back to you if there's any need to change our lunch program pricing.
Brian, I think that's excuse me, Mr. Gerber, I think that's an important point, that despite this fund balance, we are not allowed to lower the cost of the lunch or breakfast because there's a formula that we must follow, and that largely dictates the cost of the meals.
Yep. I agree with Ms. Hendricks too. It will be interesting if Michigan does step up and decide to make free lunch for all, because remember, the free lunch program we're in now is a federal program. And so it will be interesting to see how the state possibly would layer on basically purchasing lunch for everyone that doesn't get it through the federal program. It will be also interesting to see if Michigan does that, how much they start to urge people to sign up for the free federal program. because everyone that they get to sign up and qualify for the free federal program would save the state's program money. So there could be some real interesting changes and things coming. Again, that's something that has to get approved through the legislature and then signed by the governor, but it is part of one of the budget proposals, and I'm sure it's something they'll be talking about behind closed doors as they start to hammer out the 3 budget proposals and come down to what's actually going to get approved.
All right. Finally is the 23-24 student school activity funds preliminary budget as an attachment L. Ms. Hendricks.
All I'm doing really is kind of copying the adopted budget, or the budget that I'm asking you to adopt for the end of the school year into next year, and raising the expenditures just a little bit, but I'm having the revenues and expenditures match. And at the time that we do budget amendments next year, I will make sure that those numbers more accurately reflect where the activity stands. And if you want a list of all of the funds that are in those, in your financial packet, there's a balance sheet for each of those funds, for high school internal, middle school internal, Simons and Paddock. And every account that you see listed there makes up that $500,000, $600,000 budget.
All right. Any questions or comments in regards to that? All right. So again, these are the first readings of the 2022-23 budget amendments, and then also the preliminary budgets for the 23-24 school year. So we will be voting on these at our next meeting. And feel free to ask any questions of Ms. Hendricks or Mr. Gearbaugh prior to that time. As stated, there will be some adjustments based on some actions that we took this evening. And if there's any other refined numbers that come in, I'm sure we'll be made aware of those adjustments as they happen. So, all right. Next up on the agenda in the area of learning, environment, and culture, we have the WISD Parent Action Community Update from Ms. Andrea Bennick. Thank you for waiting.
Good evening. My apologies for not being able to attend the last meeting when I was slated for the agenda. Life is really busy right now, especially this month.
Sure.
But I wanted to say that we'll include information from April and May's monthly PAC meetings. In April, the PAC had the opportunity to hear from Melissa Zimmerman and Kim Mum from an organization called Moving Toward Independence. Ms. Zimmerman is an occupational therapist, and Ms. Munn is a speech and language pathologist who started this comprehensive therapy group to help all ages build their social skills. They focus on providing group therapy to help grow relationship skills, employability, communication skills, and more. Moving Toward Independence are flexible in their offerings and intentional about connecting with families to ensure that their clients are placed in the group settings that will be complementary to all their participants and that they will meet the needs of their clients. They offer 6-week sessions for elementary age, middle school, high school, and adult age groups. The cost for summer sessions is $250, and at this time they accept private pay and are working towards insurance coverage, community mental health coverage, and flexible spending accounts payouts. If you're interested in classes, you can connect with Melissa and Kim at mticoaching3@gmail.com. During April's meeting, the PAC also learned more about the path to alternative placement for students who need more support services than what their home district can provide. This includes alternative placement at High Point and other programs in the WISD, such as Progress Park and Red Oak. The PAC created a summary of the steps that are taken for determining alternative placement and discussed ways that we could support families during this process. The support from PAC representatives includes encouraging families and staff to set up regularly scheduled time to meet, to review data collection, behavior plans, and to give input to update plans as needed. We can also help families set up meeting agendas so that questions can be answered and that the meetings are purposeful with clear understanding of what reports and information is needed from all parties involved. We also encourage maintaining a positive working relationship amongst all parties while recognizing that this process can be lengthy and strong emotions and frustrations can surface during the application time. If any families have questions about alternative placement and programs in the WISD, they can reach out to me and I'll be happy to share more about the process. The PAC was also given a helpful infographic on least restrictive environment and levels of tiered support. We also have the guidance from the Michigan Office of Special Education on free appropriate public education, commonly referred to as FAPE, and least restrictive environment known as LRE. These handouts can be found online at the Michigan Department of Education, Office of Special Education. This resource also has all the guidelines for local school districts and intermediate school districts. While it can be cumbersome to navigate, there's valuable information for families to understand the standards that schools are to abide by. This month, the PAC had a thorough presentation from Brian Marcel from the WISD on the breakdown of special education funding. Washtenaw County is very fortunate to have passed a millage a number of years ago that funds special education throughout the county. The breakdown of special education funding was noted with last year's budget, showing how federal, state, Medicaid, and millage funds are allocated to the WISD, and then districts for covering the expenses of special education. For Milan families, the big takeaway from this discussion is that if your child receives Medicaid and special education support services, when you fill out the paperwork from the district, you are asked if the district has permission to bill Medicaid for services received. It is important that families check yes, allowing the district to bill Medicaid for support services. This is a key funding component for support services for students. The PAC received a copy of the compliance guidance from the Department of Education, which is a helpful breakdown of the responsibilities of the ISD in developing protocol and monitoring local districts and the ISD to ensure fidelity of implementation of IEPs and funding accountability. The PAC concluded the final meeting of the year with developing a plan to update the WISD parent handbook over the summer and brainstorming for future topics of presentations and discussions for our 23-24 meetings. The last 2 months I had informative meetings with Lon Smith, and we covered a number of topics, including the para boot camp, expense coverage related to the budget presentation from the WISD, planning for community engagement, and we touched on the My Future funding accounts. The WISD shared a flyer for a registration for the para boot camp with special education directors, and I'm pleased to say that Lon shared that information in a very timely manner, and Milan has had 20 paraprofessionals sign up for that training. Several paras are involved in the para to teacher training program, and 2 will be doing their student teaching this fall. Several more paras are enrolled to begin that program as well. Along those lines, Naomi Norman, the WISD superintendent, wrote an article for the Superintendent's Professional magazine outlining the success of the Para to Teacher pilot program. This program is being explored in various other settings to determine how it can be implemented at a broader scale. Lon and I also discussed how I can be involved in community engagement during the fall open houses at each building. I envision having a table with information for families who have students receiving special education services, including PAC information, chain of command for communication, benefits of families being involved in education, and resources for students with special needs. I intend to connect with building administrators for participating in their open houses. This will be the beginning of connecting with the community on an ongoing basis and working to build engagement with our families who often feel isolated in the special education journey. In past board meetings, it was mentioned that an update or presentation on special education services would be beneficial for the community, and I second that request. Considering the additional staff of a BCBA, social workers, and school psychologists, plus the anticipated additional students who will require services to address learning loss, I think that it makes sense that an update from the special education perspective would help to provide the community and the board with a clearer understanding of how the district is addressing the needs of students with special needs. Lon and I covered the importance of a transition night, which helps provide information for families for students who are graduating from high school and moving into the young adult program, or for students aging out of the young adult program. The transition coordinator for the WISD is encouraging local districts to host a transition night where families can find resources on community mental health, the Center for Independent Living, MyAble accounts, job training programs, setting up guardianship, applying for Social Security and Medicaid, and more. Having a comprehensive information night can help families gather initial resources and connect with a contact person for assistance in navigating this milestone of aging out of the school system. Finally, I wanted to touch on the My Future funding program and how that can be of benefit to students with lifelong disabilities. It is my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong in this, but it's my understanding that the information from Brian Marcel said that the funds can be contributed to the students' the student's MFF account can be transferred to a protected MyAble account, which will not negatively impact a student's ability to receive SSI or Medicaid once they become eligible for those benefits. Families who have a student with lifelong disabilities should set up an MFF account to begin receiving this funding as soon as their students are eligible. Milan Area Schools recently had a presentation on the MFF at a board meeting, and families can watch the archived recording to learn more. And they can also find more information on the Milan Area Schools District website. I want to take the opportunity to thank the Milan Area Schools Board of Education, the administration, the staff, and families for their support of the PAC this year. We will resume our meetings in September, and I look forward to continued collaboration with the district and the families. Thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you. Any questions for Mrs. Bennett?
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Congratulations to your son. Yep. All right. Next up on the agenda is the Milan High School Climate and Culture presentation that will be given by Mr. Hoskins, and the board will go to the audience.